And hello again, YouTube. Now, there's going to be a couple of differences to this video that you might have picked up on already. Firstly is that we are coming to you finally in full-on 4K video. And the way I managed to get this set up is that basically the 4K camera that I'm using was really struggling with having things in close-up, so I've obtained a couple of macro filters. Well, rather, I've obtained a macro filter, and I've managed to actually attach it on top of my existing macro filter. So instead of being a plus 10, we now have a plus 14 going on here. The other thing is, obviously, with this being a new camera and a new setup, the sound is going to sound a bit different. I'm actually trying two methods of recording sound. First is the on-camera audio, and second is the audio that I'm recording separately through a lavalier microphone. So I will have a listen, see which one sounds best, and use that for the recording. So, all that said, what's in the purse this time? It's a collection of $half. Now then, there are some curious things about the US currency system. The first being is that they do not put living rulers on their coinage. I mean, this kind of makes sense, especially when you think about the fact that they, replace their rulers every, what, 4 to 8 years? So instead, having a system where instead, if you want to be on a US coin, you've basically got to be either uh, an allegorical figure, as we see, for example, here. So this is a 1944 Walking Liberty $half. And frankly, my thoughts on this have been well documented. This is the same design as we see on the modern American Silver Eagles, and I am not particularly a fan. I feel like it's a bit of a crude depiction, got like kind of the wagon wheel stuck in the background. You've got the figure weirdly facing towards the viewer, but also striding sideways. Um, I think it's fair to say, not a huge fan. Now, one of the things I do want to do in this video is also talk about the Eagles on the reverse, because my word, they are some pretty impressive beasts. I mean, this one, I've got to try and be good. Remember that I'm in 4K and hold the coins far enough out that it can focus properly. Look at this majestic hulking beast. Like, that is a bird that you do not want to mess with. So this one actually has no living figures on at all. This would actually be produced during the war, and actually I can see during the war, that might be a good time to not have any kind of, potentially contentious political figures involved with your currency that you're making. But then, if we look at this one from 1960, we do have a figure. This one is Benjamin Franklin. And strictly speaking, Benjamin Franklin, some would say he has no place being on any American currency anyway, because he was never president. But, there's a whole, founding fathers. He certainly was an important political figure. So, he was on the $half for basically quite a while. And, was an important enough figure. And I just want to flip it over. And on the reverse, we have the Liberty Bell. And the Liberty Bell is not a particularly well documented thing in history. There's some uncertainty as to, whether it was just one bell or several bells, whether it's a bell that's been fixed or recast. Obviously, it's very famous for its crack, which you can kind of, see very prominently. And, obviously, there's all sorts of ridiculous myths that go on around, how the crack was formed. But essentially, again, looking just at the Wikipedia article, from what I can gather, the crack, basically, there have been several cracks. It seems like the metal that this bell was cast from was not particularly high quality, so it had a bit of a tendency to do that anyway, even when fixed. But yes, but it's in terms of American Revolutionary history, the Liberty Bell is considered a very important symbol, so that's what we have there. But again, I want to come back to the eagle. So the eagle on this one is much smaller, but you can just see him off to this side of the coin. And I don't know if eagles do weightlifting, but oh my word, if ever I've seen a bird flex, it's that eagle right there. But then something happened. More specifically, in 1963, something happened, and so the 1964 half-dollar onwards, as into this current day, bears the bust of this man, who I'm sure needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. This is John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy bears the unfortunate right of being one of a very few number of American presidents who've been assassinated, joining the likes of Abraham Lincoln, keeping being assassinated, whilst you're in office. And so he was assassinated in late 1963, and they started producing these coins in early 1964. The actual turnaround for when they started making these was remarkably short. And a good reason for that is that they actually had the portrait basically ready to go from a commemorative medal they had done the previous year. Now, the other thing is that apparently Jackie Onassis Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's wife, was consulted when they were drawing up plans to put him onto the coinage, and essentially they gave her a choice. They said, "Well, we want to put him on one of the high-value silver coins," and basically asked her which one would you suggest, and she really didn't want George Washington to be removed from the quarters, so she suggested going the $half and kicking Benjamin Franklin off. And as previously stated, I think she ultimately made the right choice. Franklin was not a president, so if you're going to kick somebody off the coins, that makes sense, right? A couple of interesting things about it. So the 64 $half is the only one that was made in 90% silver. But they didn't just make them in 1964. There was a huge demand for these. When I say huge demand, I mean like people were just like queuing up and just buying entire rolls of them as soon as they became available. From 1960, whatever it was that they did the second batch onwards, they reduced it down to 40% silver. Not because of the popularity, but just because the value of silver had changed over that time. Which means that there is a good chance that an awful lot of these Kennedy $half were actually just melted down for their metal value. Which is a shame because it genuinely gets my vote as being, I would say, the prettiest of these three. I'm definitely a big fan. I mean, not just because of Kennedy being a handsome chap. I mean, you can see for yourselves. But also just stylistically, I think this is a very well designed coin. Okay, the front is a little sparse, but that kind of works. It feels kind of modern, in a way that sort of fits with the image of Kennedy, I think. Other fun things, and I'm not sure whether this will come through on the camera or not, but you can see there's that little mark there. Let me get a suitable non-specific pointing device. See this little mark here, just on the bottom of the bust. And if you have one of these coins at home, I strongly recommend you get like a loop and have a proper look at that. That is actually a stylized initials of the guy who engraved this portrait. It's a G and an R. But because it's quite stylized, and because it's very, very small, so it can be hard to see, one of the rumors that started circulating very soon after this coin was made was that actually it was a hammer and sickle, and that there was somebody at the US Mint who was putting kind of seditious imagery into the US coinage, which is fortunately not the case. Now, one of the things I found particularly interesting was that they produced a lot of these. Like, there's a reason you can get hold of kind of high quality 64 Canadian $half quite easily. They made millions, and I mean like millions. They made like 8 times the amount they originally planned to, because they were basically being hoarded. People were just kind of putting them into storage, melting them down for the silver value, or just generally holding on to them as collector's pieces. And what the US Mint really, really wanted, what the US government really wanted, was they wanted these things to circulate. And so they just kept producing more and more of them, hoping to see people using them just in their day-to-day transactions. And I really, really like that as an idea. Like that's when you know something's important, when you're trying to get people to just make it part of their everyday habits, kind of. So you would just sort of see this habitually all the time. They never quite succeeded in doing that, but they carried on using Kennedy and they still use them to this day. Now, flipping it over, we have probably my favorite side of any US coin. Like this is just a really, really nicely laid out piece. It's, for my eye, just busy enough without being, kind of over the top. Yes, there is a lot of density to it, but it's all like nicely radially symmetric. Kind of it feels like a bunch of concentric circles. It's not just doing a bunch of weird random stuff all at once. It feels kind of laid out, and it feels like it's a good use of the space. It's anyway. So the eagle, okay, so maybe we don't have something that's as hench and ready for a fight as this one, and maybe we don't have kind of the little teeny flexor over here. I mean, instead, what we have is we have something that looks a lot like the eagle that you imagine on like the floor of the Oval Office and things. You've got it's bunch of arrows and its olive branch, and it just sort of works. And I think this works a lot better than it does on the current American Silver Eagle, because the current one on the American Silver Eagle, it's quite small for the size of coin that it's on, whereas this actually feels like it fills the space that's allotted to it really quite nicely without just sort of spilling out to the sides. Um, and yeah, basically, I just genuinely think it's a really, really nice coin. This is one of the coins that I will, I often like to have a little bit of something in my wallet, just kind of something that's a bit of an unusual coin to hold on to, play with, fiddle about with, and stuff. And I have to say that the Canadian half dollars make for very, very good ones for that. You can just sort of, genuinely, they are just enjoyable to look at. Kennedy, there is an awful lot to say about him. I think probably far more than I can say here and now. For anybody out there who isn't familiar with him, my suggestion would be to contemplate reading a book called 13 Days. It's relatively short, and it's basically the memoir of Robert F. Kennedy looking back on the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that's just, kind of a unique insight into a very important moment in history and a very important set of people in history through the eyes of somebody who was there and was intimately acquainted with the whole thing. So there we go, US half dollars. That'll do for now. Bye for now.